Senator Simons.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I too rise today to speak to Bill C-248, an act to amend the Canada National Parks Act, Ojibwe National Urban Park of Canada. And I want to begin by thanking my colleague, Senator Peter Beam, for sponsoring this bill, and my colleague, Senator Karen Sorensen, for her clear and incisive speech outlining some of the things that make this particular bill, as drafted, somewhat challenging. And I'm speaking today not just as an Alberta senator, but as a citizen of the beautiful river city of Edmonton. Edmonton is home to the largest urban park in Canada. The North Saskatchewan River Valley Park system runs through one end of Edmonton to another, west to east. It is a remarkable legacy and tribute to Edmonton city planners who began more than a century ago to assemble and preserve a wild and magical greenbelt on either side of the riverbank. In 1907, Edmonton hired Canada's very first landscape architect, Frederick Todd, to write a report on the city's park planning. Todd had actually worked with Frederick Law Olmsted, the creator of New York's Central Park and Montreal's Mount Royal. Every advantage should be taken of the great natural beauty of the river valley and ravines, Todd wrote. He envisioned what he called a necklace of parks up and down the valley, reserving land at the top of the bank so people could enjoy the views. And so, between 1907 and 1931, the city made over 100 land acquisitions to preserve the valley. Today, the park system includes more than 7,300 hectares. That's 18,000 acres. It is made up of more than 30 provincial and municipal parks that stretch from the town of Devon west of Edmonton to Fort Saskatchewan to the east. And the latest jewel in the necklace is Northeast River Valley Park, a new 77-hectare park which opened just this summer. The parks are connected by more than 160 kilometers of walking, cycling, and hiking trails, and linked north to south by a series of dramatic and beautiful pedestrian bridges and one sweetly absurd, slightly dysfunctional funicular. The River Valley Parks are where Edmontonians go to walk their dogs, paddle their canoes, to clear their heads, to hold their festivals. The River Valley Park system is where you'll find our Valley Zoo, our Fort Edmonton Living History Museum, our Matart Conservatory Botanic Gardens. Edmonton's River Valley Park system is a credit to truly visionary urban planning. It preserves and protects the stunning wilderness in the heart of a city, a ribbon of green that serves every day to remind us that our city was built on First Nations land, because this river valley was a traditional gathering place for the Cree, the Blackfoot, the Saulteaux, the Nakota Sioux, and the Métis down through the centuries and long before the first European explorers and fur traders and settlers ever arrived. Just this year, the city opened Kichiaski, a sacred space in southwest Edmonton where Indigenous groups can host spiritual ceremonies, sweats, and talking circles and grow traditional medicinal herbs. And why am I telling you all this, given that I'm not actually on salary for Edmonton's tourism office? Well, given how remarkable our linear park is, it's no surprise that many in Edmonton and in Edmonton City Hall are keenly interested in exploring the idea of turning our North Saskatchewan River Valley into an urban national park, one we can share with all Canadians. Though the idea is not without its detractors, we're sort of tire-kicking at the moment, trying to figure out how things might work. Alberta is already home to many conventional national parks: Banff, Jasper, Waterton, Elk Island, and Wood Buffalo. We are familiar with the protections that such parks enjoy, and we know that such a model probably wouldn't work for an urban national park, one that runs right through the heart of a city of 1 million people. In order for truly urban national parks to work, we need to find a model that meets the needs of the cities where those parks exist. I completely support the aspirations of the city of Windsor to have an urban national park. But if we are going to make such a project work for Windsor, and if we want it to serve as a model, a template for other urban parks going forward, we have to get this bill right. We have to make sure that the bill is actually fit for purpose and will do what it means to do. Senator Sorensen has already explained her misgivings with the bill. She tells us that not only does this bill amend the wrong piece of legislation, it lays out coordinates that are inaccurate and do not reflect the actual plans for Ojibwe National Park. The thing is, given the way the bill is written, it's difficult to know how to proceed. Allow me the liberty, if you will, of reading the opening page and few lines of the bill. It starts simply and then gets a little bit more baroque. Part 5 of Schedule 1 to the Canada National Parks Act is amended by adding the following after the description of Georgian Bay Islands National Park of Canada. Clause 4, Ojibwe National Urban Park of Canada. In the province of Ontario, all those parcels of land more particularly described as follows. A, commencing at a point intersecting with the western boundary of Ward 1 of the City of Windsor at latitude 42 degrees, 16 minutes, 33.440 seconds north, and longitude 83 degrees, 5 minutes, 56.684 seconds west. Thence southerly in a straight line to a point of latitude at 42 degrees, 16 minutes, 32.689 seconds north, and longitude 83 degrees, 5 minutes, 53.73 seconds west, and so on. And that's it. The text of the bill is a list of coordinates. Are there, as Senator Sorensen suggests, mistakes in what is included and what is not? Could we competently make amendments if some of these detailed coordinates are even slightly off? It is somewhat peculiar. If you read Schedule 1 of the National Parks Act, you'll see no other park described in quite this way. The other park descriptions include such things as landmarks and street names. They describe the boundaries of the park, using coordinates from time to time, but also describing, sometimes quite lyrically, the land the park contains. And the enabling legislation which created the first urban national park, Rouge Urban National Park, in the Greater Toronto Area, is also quite different. It specifically lays out everything from explaining what activities are and aren't allowed in the park, who is responsible for picking up the garbage and putting out the fires, and how traditional Indigenous rights to hunt and harvest will be respected. It is detailed legislation, quite different from the text of C-248. Again, I want to stress I am a proponent of national parks and proud that Alberta is home to so many of them. I am enthusiastic about the idea of urban national parks, and I think the North Saskatchewan River Valley could well be an ideal location to create one. And while I have never been to Windsor, the research I've done suggests that Ojibwe Prairie Complex would be another outstanding site. As Senator Beam explained to us last June, the proposed park would contain about 364 hectares of land that is already publicly owned, including Ojibwe Park, Spring Garden Natural Area, Black Oak Heritage Park, Tallgrass Prairie Heritage Park, Ojibwe Prairie Provincial Nature Reserve, and Ojibwe Shores. That last parcel, Ojibwe Shores, is a 13-hectare green space which represents the only remaining undeveloped natural shoreline in the entire Windsor-Detroit area. That small parcel is home alone, as Senator Beam told us, to 130 different endangered species. Yet I worry that this act might accidentally undercut the autonomy of the City of Windsor, the town of LaSalle, and their citizens. Parks Canada and the City of Windsor have already signed a statement of collaboration announcing their intent to work together on the potential designation of the park, and this bill might supersede that. And then there is a new issue, one I only learned about this morning when I spoke with Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkens. First, Mayor Dilkens told me how essential the drafting of this bill had been to getting the whole discussion off the ground. He was full of praise for MP Brian Massey, its sponsor. Brian Massey's bill was invaluable at the beginning of the process, he told me. And without the impetus of the bill, as he explained to me, the Port Authority might not have turned over the riverfront land that it controlled to Parks Canada. Brian Massey's bill had the most impact it could just by tabling it, Mayor Dilkens told me. But now, said the mayor, the coordinates of the bill are no longer correct. And there's a happy reason for that. The town of LaSalle, a bedroom community south of Windsor, now wants to include some of its lands within the park boundaries, and the bill, as drafted, does not include those municipal lands. We need to be absolutely certain that we are not inadvertently creating a situation where municipal leaders might find themselves cut out of the conversation. Mayor Dilkens raised another concern to me. Right now, there's no charge to access any of those lands for the residents of Windsor. He remains concerned that if we make this land a national park, there may be a fee required to enter the lands, and that he opposes. In June, Senator Beam informed the Chamber that Parks Canada was working with the Caldwell First Nation and the Walpole Island First Nation on co-management agreements in which both those nations were interested. When I spoke to Brian Massey last week, he told me that the Caldwell First Nation has endorsed Bill C-248, but the Walpole Island Nation has not, at least not as yet. This makes it even more essential that we do not rush to approve a bill that might, however unintentionally, short-circuit some part of those sensitive negotiations and frustrate the rights of all the First Nations involved to prior and informed consent. Finally, as Senator Sorensen explained, Bill C-248 doesn't explain who would pay for what, and this puzzles me a tad. A private member's bill, as I understand it, can't effectively commit the federal government to spend money, at least not directly. Yet this bill was approved in the other place with a decision made there that it didn't violate the protocols for a private member's bill. Still, given how much it costs to manage and maintain a national park, I think that's something we need to consider too. What will this act end up costing the federal public purse, not just in the short term, but in perpetuity? I understand the the natural enthusiasm and the natural frustration that the people of Windsor and the surrounding First Nations feel with the seemingly glacial pace, 3 speeches in one day. I think I've lost my capacity to enunciate. I understand the natural frustration that the people of Windsor and of the surrounding First Nations feel with the seemingly glacial pace at which plans for this long-awaited park are moving. And it certainly seems that the bill has indeed worked its magic as a bit of a goad to get things going. But I hope that once this bill heads off to committee, senators will dig into the issues together to ensure that we don't end up with unintended consequences that could prejudice urban national parks themselves. Thank you, merci, and hi-hi.